Well, hello again. I'm Dave.
I'm Hepua. Aloha.
And Dr. Cooper has asked us to give you a little bit of advice as far as moving forward with your study. So really the first bit of advice is get out now. What in God's name are you thinking? No, of course not. That's So Hepua, why don't you start?
One of the first things I'd like to share with you is that if you are planning on doing multiple interviews, to plan a sufficient interval in between your meetings with your participants. I totally underestimated how much time it would take to have the transcripts done, to proofread them, and prepare for the next interview. And when you're doing, say, 5 to 10 different people all at the same time, and you're getting transcripts done, and you're trying to proofread that one and prep for a second interview, it can really be kind of crazy for you. So plan a sufficient interval between the meetings with your participants, especially if you're going to have them prepare something, as Dave and I did, such as an artifact. They need sufficient time to gather those items, to think about what those mean to them, and possibly to create something if that's what you're going to ask them to do. So my advice is to plan sufficient time in between your meetings. Dave?
Well, and I think kind of a follow-up to that too is no matter how organized you try to be, or no matter how prescriptive you're trying to be as far as like what this first session is going to be about, in my case, a lot of times I would show up and they didn't have all their artifacts, so they hadn't done the academic journey. So I still have an hour and a half, and I'm going to have to work on something else. So just be, prepared to be flexible. You may have to go into some of your questions that are a bit more generic or something like that. I think my first bit of advice is the one that's been given to us on a number of bases. I think when you embark on a PhD study, you just think that you're going to completely reinvent the world, or your study has to be this unbelievably earth-shattering type of, and maybe yours will be. I don't know, but I think when you come in with that kind of expectation, it's really kind of daunting. And some of the advice that's been given to us is it really kind of helped us to understand that it's not, like I said, reinventing the wheel. And the term that we get talked about a lot, or our advisors and professors talk about, is just simply putting your brick in the wall. And again, it kind of goes back to understanding your literature review, knowing your subject, being passionate about your subject, and then just understanding where you can kind of add, to that. And I think it really kind of sort of declutters the process, and I think it kind of creates a little more relaxation as far as to enjoy your study.
Remember, the goal is to get you a degree.
The best dissertation is a done dissertation.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Again, if you're going to be doing interviews, one of the things you want to be aware of is that your participants will not keep to your time schedule. I mistakenly thought I could accomplish 30 interviews in 3 months, and it took me 5 months. Why? Because participants have their own lives. They get sick. They go on business conferences. They have work conflicts. And so many times meetings got pushed out. And so it will not fit your timetable necessarily. So allow yourself plenty of extra time, because the interviews do get rescheduled.
I think there was something that Hepua had said in one of the other clips, was this idea of this passionate about your study. I kind of wanted to follow up on that. I said it really needs to be something that you love, because you are going to spend an enormous amount of time. And I know that sounds like an oversimplified maybe statement to make, but it really is essential that you find something that means something to you. And I know I've used the phrase the worldview as a part of it, but I think, again, if you look at Hepua's study, where you can see where her role as a Polynesian female in a higher ed setting is something that means something to her, and to study other folks going through the same thing, it becomes good, fun stuff to kind of talk about. In my case, I've always been interested in motivation and leadership and what turns people on and what turns people off. So to immerse myself in it, it's really kind of fun. I mean, even doing the lit review, as much as I'll say that's a long and grinding process, I mean, I really got to have a chance to learn a lot of fun stuff. along those lines, though, if you can kind of get your topic early, the thing that's really beautiful about that is you can use your other classes. I almost every class that I took, because I knew my subject somewhat early, I could always kind of develop whatever project I was working on in that. So it built my lit review, and it really built on what I wanted to do.
I agree. If you can begin selecting your topic early, as Dave and I did, then every single class project, you can gear it towards your particular topic. And every time you write a paper, it's adding a little bit. It's contributing a little bit more knowledge to your study. And that is really so helpful, so that you don't finish all your coursework and then select your research topic, because then you're going to be starting from scratch. You begin building layer by layer as you go through your classes and begin adding and contributing towards your study. That was really helpful. Another idea that I wanted to share with you, again, regarding the participants is, remember I talked to you about member checking, how once you do your transcripts, you send them out to your participants for them to review and edit. And you expect to get them back in a timely manner. And I gave them 2 to 3 weeks, and I didn't get them back. And so I have to call, I have to email, I text, everything I possibly could. And out of the 9 women, so far I've had 7 who have returned everything. I'm still waiting on 2 women for 2 months. I send them a daily email and sometimes a text message. And now I've gotten down to cute little cartoons that have sad little faces like, I'm still waiting. So just be prepared for that.
Do you know where they live?
Yes. In some cases.
Ding dong. I'm out of it. Yeah, the one thing I wanted to also emphasize, I think, is that we have a tendency to look at these things as really, scholarly, and they are, and so forth. But I think the beauty of going in the qualitative realm is that it does give you a chance to be somewhat creative. And again, going back to this idea of being true to your worldview, I mean, you can really see in Hepua's study where the beauty of her write-up and the beauty of her study is really in this wonderful connection of the storytelling and the worldview of native, indigenous people, native Hawaiians, and even weaving the voyaging story in as she tells the story. And it just brings me back to the use of the artifacts. And I mean, you may think asking someone to create an artifact and they end up painting a portrait or something, or some abstract art may not mean anything, but you'd be amazed at how really rich and how connected it is to what you do, and it just makes your story more compelling. I mean, as opposed to just writing up a bunch of interview questions or things like that, you start telling about someone's tits of steel or something like that. I mean, boy, that becomes kind of neat stuff that your readers are going to really enjoy, as well as you enjoy writing it up as well.
One last thing that I have to share with you is regarding your theoretical frame. In my case, because my study was about Indigenous women, I chose a feminist frame as well as an Indigenous frame. That becomes a little challenging to look at your findings through 2 separate lenses. So my suggestion to you would be to stick to one theoretical frame as you conduct your study. My study got even more complicated when I decided to use 2 methods, storytelling as well as artifacts.
Well, one last thing. I know Dr. Cooper asked us to talk a little bit about working with a committee, and I think really the choice of your advisor, your committee chair, is just essential. And again, knowing your area and knowing who's around you that has those kind of strengths. And I was extremely lucky that my topic fit with Dr. Cooper's and qualitative as well. And it really is her reputation of knowing who to pull in and bring in onto the committee and kind of round it out really made for a very successful committee for me. So I don't know if you have any committee comments or.
Your committee is extremely important. Yeah. You need to really be careful about who you select. Make sure that each of those members of the committee are going to contribute in some fashion to your study. One last thing I'd like to say. You have a wonderful, absolutely the best instructor ever. Dr. Cooper is amazing. Dave and I have had her for many of our classes. We're so fortunate to have her as our dissertation advisor, and you are going to thoroughly love this class. Mahalo.
Aloha.